We're almost done with the life cycles. Now that we had a look at updating triggered from the outside by props changes, let's now have a look at the update lifecycle process for internal changes because of set state basically. There, we don't start with component will receive props because we won't receive props. Instead, we start right away with should component update and we get next props next state here too. And just as before, we may cancel the updating process here. And as before, we should decide whether or not to continue and we shouldn't cause side effects. So the logic is the same as before here. Thereafter, we reach component will mount and the logic is the same as before here. Then render, then we re-render all the child components and did update at the end. And I quickly walked through that because it's basically the same process as before for an external change, an external trigger. The only difference is that the first lifecycle hook, will receive props, is missing here. So hence we don't need to include or implement any new methods now into our project because we already got all these methods. Nonetheless, I will implement them in app.js, which is the place where we do change the state, so that we can see it there too. So after did mount and so on, I want to implement the should component update, will update, and so on methods. So I'm going to copy them from persons.js and move them over to app.js after component did mount. And of course there I should adjust this reference here. Persons will be app.js, so replace all persons.js references in the console log here with app.js. And should component update here, I'll also set it to true for now. Now let's save this and let's now see how this influences our app. If we reload it, we don't see any updating method here. Let me clear this and click the button now. Now this changes. You see right at the start, we're in the update app.js should component update trigger. And this makes sense because clicking this button alone called set state and therefore triggered the updating of that component. Obviously, before we change the props and therefore trigger the updating process in the child components. Because before we can change the child components, the state there has to update. So we're in should component update and then component will update and thereafter render, and now we leave for the normal process. At the end though, we see inside component did update for app.js. So this is important. The app.js updating runs first because it's triggered upon a state change, which obviously is the first thing that happens. These are all the lifecycle hooks. Now let's go back to should component update and how we may improve the performance of our application with it. Let me show you an example.